Considering home security? Consider this. For 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security company. The yard sign isn't just a sign, it's a line in the sand. It's no wonder 5 times more people choose ADT to protect their homes. Visit ADT.com to learn more. For license information and terms and conditions, visit ADT.com.
We open the show, and there's only one thing to say today. Congratulations to the Houston Astros, champions of the baseball world for the first time in their 55 years of existence. Booger McFarland is here, and it's been a fun morning looking back on what was, I think, by any standard of measure, and I actually saw the Game 6 television rating was greater than last year's Game 6, the much-heralded Cubs and Indians series. And we'll see what last night was. It wasn't the greatest game ever last night. It was almost felt like a little bit of deflating after what has been such a sensational postseason, but you can't quibble with that. I think by any standard of measure, this was an enormous win for baseball. The whole season was good, the playoffs were fantastic, and the World Series was sensational.
No doubt, Greeny, and I actually think Game 7, the numbers are going to be a little higher than we think because the game got off to a good start. You had a lot of runs scored early, especially from the Astros part, and then there was always that moment where you're just sitting there waiting. Are the Dodgers going to make a run? Are they going to put together a rally? What inning are they going to do it in? How long can Kershaw go? So even though there weren't runs scored, there was always a bit of intrigue by how the game was going to go. So I'd be interested to see what that number wound up being last night.
We're going to get it in this hour. We'll see one way or another. For those of you who have not had a chance to go through some of the details of it again, George Springer named the World Series MVP. And nothing probably illustrates the difference in the game today versus the game that someone like me grew up following than George Springer. He hit 6 home runs during this postseason, all of them from the leadoff spot. He hit 5 home runs in the World Series and had 29 total bases, which sets a new record for any postseason series, doing it all from the leadoff spot. And our Tim Kirkchin waxing rhapsodic about the kid from hard-hitting New Britain.
Such an athletic team, the Astros, and the most athletic one of them all is George Springer. The way he runs, the power he hits with. So 5 homers ties a World Series record, most extra base hits, most total bases. Only guy ever to hit 4 home runs in 4 consecutive games within one World Series. That's your World Series MVP.
Yeah. What do you think of that, Booger? You grew up with the game of baseball, and the guy who led off, I don't know if we ever look up those numbers on the 70s. You look up the Big Red Machine, great teams, those Yankee teams that played. Mickey Rivers would be the leadoff man. I don't think he ever hit a home run in his entire life. It's a totally different sport.
Greeny, when you looked at baseball in the past, we thought of it as you get the leadoff guy on. He's going to be a guy that steals bases, sets the tone. The second guy was trying to get him over the third, and then now you get it to your 3, 4, 5 hitters who are supposed to drive him in. Well, the game has changed, and I think Joe Madden can be attributed a lot to that from the standpoint of he's a guy who's been very creative. Okay, he's batted Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot. He's moved Rizzo up. Like, he will figure out a way. How can I get my best hitters the most at bats? Remember when Giancarlo Stanton was chasing the home run record?
Sure.
They moved him up because you want to get your best guys the most at bats, because now it's either strikeout or home run. And so I think the way of manufacturing runs in baseball is changing. So therefore the lineups are going to change. So I don't think you're going to go back to seeing Ricky Henderson in the leadoff spot. You're going to see guys that can hit the ball, whether it's home runs, doubles, hit for power. They're going to do that. No longer are you looking for the average guys at the top spot.
Yeah, maybe we have to redefine what we think of as your number 2 hitter, your number 3 hitter,
right,
your 4 and 5 guys with power. You got these circular lineups that are going on now, and you have all this extraordinary youth in the game. You look at all these young teams, the Yankees, followed by the Cubs, followed by the Astros, followed by the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks, who had the highest WAR of all the teams in the sport amongst players 27 or younger, and they were all good this year. The Diamondbacks made the playoffs. The Cubs made the playoffs. The Dodgers made the playoffs. The Yankees made the playoffs, and the Astros won the World Series. Those were the 5 youngest, not the 5 youngest teams, but they were the 5 teams that had the most production from guys who were under 27, and they all made the playoffs. So these are all teams that are going to be there for the foreseeable future. That's where the sport is. It's in a very good place. We have not focused a lot this morning on the Dodgers side of this, with the exception of the conversation about the tipping of the pitches. Let's hear from Clayton Kershaw afterwards. He got his first chance in the World Series, had some good moments, obviously not so good in Game 5, pitched well last night, but it was too little, too late.
It's just too hard to think about, what the Astros are getting to do right now, and it's too hard to think about all that. So I'm just going to maintain my focus on that and remember we put ourselves out there to fail, and we did, but not many teams got that opportunity. So not easy right now for sure.
How do you view Clayton Kershaw now? Because we came into this postseason with a certain depiction of him as a guy that had failed in the postseason. So now, after the Dodgers failed in the World Series, he basically had 1.5 good outings. I mean, because I would think that Game 5 was not a good outing for him. So how do you view him now?
No, Game 5 was a disaster. And unfortunately, that leaves a little bit of a bitter taste in what was otherwise a great postseason. He was terrific leading into the World Series. But if you're a Dodger fan, and listen, Kershaw himself, right, I think, is going to remember that you had Game 5,
yes,
and you had a 4-run lead, and you had Kershaw on the mound. That's a game that's a lock.
Yeah.
That is a lock. You take that to the bank with the great pitchers in history. And he didn't get it done. So he doesn't need me. No one needs me to tell them that is going to hover over his legacy until it goes away. Now, again, he pitched great last night in the 4 innings that he got, but his team was losing 5-0 or 5-1 at one point. It didn't make any difference anymore. So if he got that start, and that's been a big part of the conversation here this morning for those of you who are just waking up, a big part of the conversation here this morning has been, did Dave Roberts make a mistake? Buster brought it up, and others have as well. Did Dave Roberts make a mistake? If Kershaw was ready to go 4 innings last night, should they have been the first 4? And, again, I'll say that's easy to say now that we've seen what happened. Yu Darvish was extraordinary down the stretch of the season and in the playoffs up until the World Series. But it's certainly a legitimate question to ask now that we see the way things turned out.
As it pertains to Kershaw, Greeny, here's what I'll say. I think Kershaw is like a lot of other guys in sports that have been dominant in the postseason. But when the stakes get a little higher, their mentality changes. You look at Peyton Manning. Why did Peyton Manning struggle so much in football? I think it was the mentality, trying to do too much. And then after you fail once, twice, 3 times, now it becomes this big bear on your back. I think Clayton Kershaw is the greatest pitcher of our generation. I think he's proven that on the field. His postseason struggles, in my opinion, are all mental. Because he has great stuff. He had great stuff in Game 1. He had great stuff last night through 4 innings. And what happened in Game 5? He had a 4-0 lead and then a 7-4 lead, and he blew it. Some people talk about fatigue. I think it's mental fatigue. How can you be sharp over and over? And the number one thing you have to have is confidence. Great players normally always have confidence. But sometimes, Greeny, the great players in their sport, they lose confidence. Why does LeBron James miss free throws in the clutch? He's maybe the greatest basketball player ever. But sometimes the confidence that he has in that shot, it wanes. Same with Clayton Kershaw. The confidence that he has in his stuff in bigger games wanes. So I think we're going to view Kershaw as the greatest pitcher of our generation, who just sometimes in the biggest moments just couldn't get it done. Because when you're the greatest pitcher and you're throwing in Game 1, you're in Game 5, and part of Game 7, you're supposed to win those games if you pitch for an extended period of time.
No, listen, I totally agree with you. I mean, the only thing you need to know is that the World Series is tied at 2 games apiece, and Clayton Kershaw is pitching the huge Game 5, and that game ended 13-12. Right? I mean, the game that Kershaw and Keuchel, candidly, are starting is not supposed to end 13-12, right, and that was the 13-12 game. So, listen, Clayton Kershaw, you don't take anything away from his greatness. He is one of the greatest pitchers of all time. But until he gets it done in the biggest pressure spots, in the most significant spots, they really weren't challenged in the playoffs up until this series. So, yeah, he was terrific against the Diamondbacks, terrific against the Cubs, and those matter.
Yes.
But there wasn't that kind of pressure there because they won both those series as handily as they did. I'm not trying to find ways to diminish what he did. He pitched very well leading into the World Series. But what we're going to remember certainly is Game 5. That was their opportunity to take total control of the World Series, and he wasn't able to do it. The other thing that I think is really significant, and Eduardo Perez did a great job talking about it today, and someone sent me a clip of Carlos Beltran talking about it on the Fox postgame last night. One of the disadvantages of getting up at 3:45 in the morning is that I don't get to see a lot of the postgame coverage. That game ends and you go to sleep. But on the postgame, Carlos Beltran really almost hinted, even went beyond hinting at the idea that Yu Darvish was tipping his pitches. And Eduardo Perez opened our show this morning with terrific analysis of that. And it could be boiled down as simply as this, that when he was throwing his fastball, and Eduardo picked this up watching the television broadcast.
Right.
So the Astros were on it. and that when Darvish was throwing his fastball, his hand was totally still in the glove before he went into his motion. And when he was throwing the slider, there's a little bit of movement. You figure getting his fingers exactly where he wants them. And that the Astros picked up on that, and that's the way they were on everything he was throwing last night. So that's a huge storyline coming out of this game. And I'll continue to ask, if the Astros picked up on that and they were ready for it last night, how do the Dodgers not know it? Where's the self-scouting? How does the Dodger pitching coach? What is his job if it's not to see that? You're tipping your pitches. You need to do something about this here. I don't understand that piece of it. But one way or another, I think that's a huge story coming out of last night.
Completely agree with that. And I just wonder, Buster told us that you was basically not sharp in warm-ups. He bounced the ball to the backstop. And if I'm the manager or I'm the pitching coach and I'm down there watching my horse get ready to go, and this Game 7 of the World Series, and I'm seeing him bounce balls and throw balls to the backstop, I may call Dave Robinson like, hey, he doesn't have it tonight. Like, something is amiss. Something is not right now. And to our point that you and I have been going back and forth all morning, maybe you started, but that hook would have been so quick in the first inning. And to me, that was the mistake that Roberts made.
I agree with you. I think the criticism of Roberts is, did he not get him out of there soon enough? I do not think you criticize him for starting Darvish in the game. And about the bad warm-up, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, history is filled with stories of pitchers who threw perfect games or no-hitters and said, the hilarious part is when I was warming up, I was terrible. I had no stuff. I didn't think I had anything, and then I went out there and I threw a perfect game. So the warm-up, you never know. And to use a ridiculous analogy, but you and I, we know, if you're playing golf, some days on the range before you go out, you can't hit it straight at all. Yeah. You're hitting everything, sideways, and you go out there and you shoot the round of your life or of your summer or whatever it is. So I can't put too much into the warm-up. I get it. It's interesting to hear about after the fact. But I can't blame the pitching coach for not calling up Dave Roberts and saying he looks bad in warm-up. We got to start somebody else.
Well, most of the time I play well all the time, so when I'm on the range, my shots are flush. So I don't know what it's like to warm up bad and then play good.
Listen, 82-year-old Gary Player is very nervous right now.
He is. That's why he's staying in South Africa right now.
He is very worried about it. All right, we are Mike and Mike. So there you have it. There's your story coming out of the World Series last night. We're Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Progressive is celebrating 5 years and more than 500 cars donated to vets. To learn more, visit keys-to-progress.com. Booger is in for Golick today. Let's do next question.
It's time for
next question.
Next question.
Next question.
Next question.
Next question.
Next question is brought to you by Indeed.com. Post your next job opening on the world's #1 job website.
All right, let's go all around the world of sports, and let's start with this. Booger McFarland, which team is most likely to return to the World Series next year, the Astros or the Dodgers?
Wow. I'm going to go with the Astros. They have the best offense in baseball. I think it's proven now that baseball is strikeout or home run. So either you have a dominant pitching staff or a dominant offensive lineup, and I think they have a dominant offensive lineup. They're young. They're still hungry. And those guys play for each other. Like, you can tell they have each other's back, and there's a lot to be said in sports for chemistry and team unity, and they definitely have it.
I'm trying to think about which one will have the tougher road. There are really good young teams that we just described in both leagues. In the American League, you have Cleveland, you have the Yankees, you have the Red Sox. In the National League, you have the Diamondbacks, who are young and good and getting better. The Nationals are still really good. The Cubs. I think I'm going to say, I agree with you. I think I'm going to say if I had to bet on one of these teams to get back next year, I would say it's the Astros. Next question. True or false? The 49ers need to play Jimmy Garoppolo this season.
I think it's true. Anytime you trade for someone, you have to find out, especially with this many games left in the season, what they can do on the field and how they can help you. And also from a perception standpoint, Greeny, if I'm a guy on the 49ers team and we've just traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, I want to know what he can do. I mean, I want to see him. If I got to be out here on the field and play, yeah, we're terrible. Yeah, we stink, but I still got to show up and work. So why does the Golden Boy not have to play? Why does he get a pass? And so I think it's true. I think he has to play. If you're Kyle Shanahan and you want to keep some credibility in this locker room with your players, not just this year, but going forward, I think he has to play.
Well, I mean, I think this is only a topic because they said, I can't promise you guys that he'll play this year. The notion that he wouldn't play at all, it never even would have entered my mind. It'd be a question of how quickly he can get out there. Do they have to play him this year? I don't know. The question is actually phrased, should they play him this year? I would suggest it's a bad sign if he's not going to be ready to play at all. Now, the flip argument to that, I suppose, could be, if he goes out there and plays well, are you almost defeating your cause? Because you want to have the first pick in the draft this year. You're 0-8. Cleveland is 0-8. You're at a race to the bottom here, and that pick could be extremely valuable. There's nothing better than having the first pick in a draft when there's a ton of quarterbacks out there that people want, and you don't need one. I think that's like your dream scenario. So maybe, you keep him on the bench because you're afraid if you put him out there, he might win too much.
But here's a guy that hasn't played a lot of football in his career right now as it is. And the only way you get better at football is to play football. Like the only way you get better at doing radio, you got to do radio. And I think Jimmy G has to get on the football field at some point. So if you're going to throw away this year and he hadn't played a lot in New England already, then at some point you're basically going to say, you know what, we can coach him up during training camp and during OTAs and get him ready for the season. Football players aren't built that way. I think he wants to play. The reason he's not in New England now, the reason he didn't accept the deal that the Patriots allegedly offered him in the summertime, A, because it probably wasn't for enough money, and B, because he doesn't want to sit on the bench. He's tired of being Tom Brady's shadow. He's tired of being the second best looking guy on the team. He wants to be number one.
I disagree. He was the best. He is actually better looking than Brady. Leave it to the Patriots to have the two handsomest quarterbacks in football. Next question. If you had the number one pick in the NFL draft and you needed a quarterback, who would you take?
Josh Rosen. That's who I'm taking. Darnold's decision-making to me has been terrible and hasn't gotten better. I look at Allen up at Wyoming. It's hard to judge him. All the physical tools. Hasn't played to that ability. Yes, his supporting cast isn't very good. I look at Rosen. Rosen has it. And I understand we're a bit bothered by the attitude. We're a bit bothered by some of the antics. I love the hot tub in the dorm room, by the way. Mm-hmm. He's a guy that could play for me because when you watch the ball come out of his hand, to me, his mechanics, his motion, the way he throws the football, he's got it off the field, and I think he has it on the field.
Let me throw a monkey wrench at you because I know this. I don't think this was how the question was designed. If you had the number one pick in the NFL draft and needed a quarterback, who would you take? Would you throw $100 million at Kirk Cousins?
No, I wouldn't throw it because I don't think Kirk Cousins is a guy who – and I'll phrase it this way. If we're saying that the $100 million equates to a franchise quarterback, no. If we're saying the $100 million is the going market for getting an average starting quarterback, yeah, I'll probably do that if that's what you're looking for. But I equate the $100 million mark as being a top 5 to 7 guy, and Kirk Cousins is not that.
His numbers actually would suggest he is. There are a bunch of young guys. I don't know how to quantify at this point Deshaun Watson and Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott. I mean, to say any of them are better than Cousins, who's been a starter now for, 4 years? Still not that long of a body of work. Would you, right now, you'd rather have Carson Wentz than Kirk Cousins, right?
Yeah.
If I just gave you either one of those guys.
Oh, absolutely. I'll take Carson
Dak Prescott?
Wentz. Take Dak Prescott, yeah.
Deshaun Watson?
Absolutely. Greeny, I'm not enamored with numbers. There's an old saying, and I've said this saying many a time, stats are like bikinis. They show some things, but they don't reveal all things. So we can be a stats guy, and we can look at the numbers and say, hey, man, these numbers are great. But when you get down to winning football, can you make great decisions in crunch time and win football games? And it tells me something that the people who know Kirk Cousins the best don't want him in Washington. That tells me a lot. So, no, I wouldn't take it.
Next question. Putting the over-under at starts that Brock Osweiler will make this year at 7.5. Denver has 9 games remaining. If you haven't heard, they're going to make the switch to Osweiler as their starter this week. 7.5 is the over-under. Which way are you going?
I'm taking the under. The last time we saw Brock Osweiler, he was terrible. I don't think he's gotten much better. He'll probably be the same. I think they're putting him in out of necessity right now. Paxton Lynch he's been hurt. He hasn't been quite healthy. Trevor Siemian, Greeny, what's going on with you, boy? I mean, I've been trying to defend him, but I mean,
what I think has gone on with Trevor is that Trevor is not at a stage of his career right now, and maybe he'll never be this guy, where you can ask him to lead a team. I think he can be a solid quarterback
right.
If you're running the ball well, if you have good offensive balance. Obviously, their defense is fantastic.
Yes.
They've had some injury problems there as well. The offensive line is terrible.
Yeah.
So if you have a good situation for a quarterback, I think Trevor's good enough to go in there and win you games. If you're saying basically, Trevor, we need you to be Aaron Rodgers here, they're asking him to do things that guys like Aaron Rodgers do, and we say, oh, well, why can't every quarterback do that? Well, if every quarterback could do that, we wouldn't be talking about Aaron the way we do. Trevor isn't that.
Yeah.
So, you put Trevor Siemian on a good team with a good running game and a good offensive line, he'll be fine. He'll get you from point A to point B.
Yeah.
They've asked more of him than that, and it just hasn't worked out, obviously, and that's why I don't think it's going to work out with Osweiler either. Yeah. Next question. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your level of concern right now with the Cavaliers, who, by the way, are 3-5?
Wow, I would say 5 because it's early in the season. But, Greeny, here are the alarming things. Here's what's coming out of Cleveland. They're talking about effort, energy. LeBron is saying, I don't know if we're in good enough shape. Wait a minute. So we've kind of elongated this season a little bit, more practice time, less backs-to-backs. So why are you guys so tired? Why isn't there energy? And the fact that their defense is terrible once again this year. So this is 2 years in a row where the defense has been bad. No longer is Kyrie Irving there. So, LeBron, it's on you. We're coming to you for all the answers. You got some new players there, but you are the leader of this team right now. So I would put it at a 5, Greeny. But the more alarming factor is this. Ty Lue doesn't seem to have an answer. When you ask Ty Lue after the game what's going on, he seems lost. And I know Ty Lue has won a championship and he's been to all these finals. I get that, but he seems to not have an answer right now. And if I'm Cleveland, I'll put it at a 5, but it is alarming right now, especially they're losing to terrible teams.
And finally, how much of the blame for the Giants' struggles this season do you put on Ben McAdoo? Their offense is terrible, and that's his baby. Now, obviously, they've had all kinds of receiver issues, injury issues. Their offensive line never got any better. Maybe that's not his fault. They didn't bolster it during the offseason. Now they've got all kinds of off-the-field stuff. They've got suspensions, it feels like, every single week. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of feeling that maybe he's lost control of the team. What part of the blame do you put for the Giants' struggles on the coach?
Oh, a lot of it. Because, Greeny, we said on this show, and I think you and I were on the show last year, when all these offensive coordinators were getting jobs as head coaches. And we're like, yep, teams are going to the offensive mode. Think about it now. These guys are struggling. Look at Dirk Cutter in Tampa. All that talent Tampa has, struggling. Look at McAdoo. All the talent they have. And I get it. Some guys have been hurt. But when you're an offensive coordinator, your job is to be able to kind of scheme up offense. And if your quarterback is still there, you should still have an opportunity to do that. So to me, this is a referendum out there to all the people that said, okay, this is now an offensive league. All these offensive guys are now in positions of power at the head coaching position. Better beware of that because there's some offensive coordinators that are now head coaches, Cutter and McAdoo, that are struggling.
I've got some thoughts on that for sure. I think you're definitely onto something there.
Hey girl, have you done something new with your scales? Using new moisturizer? Nice. It really brings out the hazel in your eyes. Oh, hold on. Are you using whitening strips too? Your fangs look good, girl. Really good.
A really charming snake charmer? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Wait, what? Have you been doing Pilates too?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Good job by Hembo. I asked him to look up a couple of numbers for me, and he's got some for me here. So George Springer is named the World Series MVP. He hit 5 home runs in the World Series, hitting in the leadoff spot.
Yes.
Nothing illustrates the difference in the game of baseball better than that statistic from the game that I grew up watching. Mm-hmm. So I'm a child of the 1970s. Now, I don't remember, not old enough to have seen the great Oakland A's teams that won all those World Series in the early 70s. But they won 3 straight championships, 72, 73, 74. In those 3 World Series combined, they got 1 home run from the leadoff spot.
Wow.
That was Bert Campaneris. Then came the Big Red Machine. Them I do remember. 75 and 76. Their primary leadoff hitter was Pete Rose. Mm-hmm. In their 2 World Series championships, they did not get a single home run from the leadoff spot. The next 2 years were the Yankees, 77 and 78. Mickey Rivers was their primary leadoff man. Roy White and Paul Blair also led off games for them, and they did not get a single home run from the leadoff spot. So 1972, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those 7 years, 3 teams, great teams all. I mean, all that won multiple championships. In those 7 consecutive World Series, the winning team got a combined total of 1 home run from their leadoff man. George Springer hit 5 in this series.
How much does the DH play a factor? Because the Astros are in the American League. Their team is built a little bit differently.
Yeah.
In the National League, the pitcher's going to hit ninth, usually always, except if you're Joe Madden, he'll hit him eighth sometime. But they still have the pitcher hitting. So how much do you think the DH plays a role in how you set your lineup and whether or not you put a guy that can get on base and hit for average or whether you put a power guy like Springer up there?
Well, it's a combination of that. I mean, the Reds were a National League team. The Yankees were an American League team. They had the DH then. But it has evolved. So what part of it is that, certainly.
Right.
It's more likely to happen from an American League team than a National League team, I guess. But also, if you think about it, it's really just much more, I think, a product of the times.
Yes.
Where it used to be that trading an out for a base sounded like a reasonable proposition. And as Cal Ripken said to us when he was live with us earlier this morning, as recently as when he played in the 80s, if you struck out, you were embarrassed.
Right.
Now a strikeout is just an out. It's just another out. Doesn't matter if you had a fly ball to the warning track or, you swing and miss on strike three. It's basically viewed the same way.
Yeah.
And that's what leads to guys like Aaron Judge and all these others who are going to hit 50 home runs or they're going to strike out 200 times. And that's what the sport is. Yeah. And so I guess it just sort of makes sense that the guy hitting at the top of the order, there's just another chance to put the ball in the seats 5 times in a game.
Yeah, and I just think that a lot of managers are going to start managing this way, especially when you have guys that can do it. Now, obviously, coaching and managing, once again, you have to put your players in position to succeed. And so I think this is not going to be a wholesale philosophy change, but I do think some managers, if they have players like a Springer, like like some of these other guys that can hit for power, they will put them at the top of the lineup so they can get them more at bats.
That was well done, Hembo. Good job, good thinking as we looked into that. Tomorrow at this time, we'll be talking college football with Timmy Tebow about what's going on at Florida and all the rest of that. And with that thought in mind, I have not had a chance to ask you yet, Booger, and if anyone who's watching, obviously you know Booger. He does a terrific job in the ABC studios for us all day Saturday on the college football, and then you're there for the college football ranking shows. But for those who did not get a chance to see it and have not heard your take, Georgia is 1, Alabama is 2, Notre Dame is 3, Clemson is 4. As far as you are concerned, does the committee on the right path as they start this season?
I think they're on the right path, and I'll start with the top. Georgia and Alabama, you're basically splitting hairs. Most people that watch the tape, Greeny, think that Alabama is the best team. They have a more consistent quarterback, more seasoned. Georgia has a freshman in Jake Fromm. Vegas likes Alabama. They said Vegas would be Alabama would be favored by 10 over Georgia. So Georgia is number 1, though, because of the win they have at number 3 Notre Dame early in the season. I like that win. It's one of the best wins, if not the best win in the country. So I think the committee got it right by placing Georgia number 1, Alabama number 2. Notre Dame's schedule with how they've played, how good they've gotten, and how they're ascending. I think it's important to look at Oklahoma. Oklahoma's defense is descending, which is why, in my opinion, Oklahoma is not in the top 4 right now because of where they're headed. Okay, Notre Dame is ascending, which is why they're number 3. Putting Clemson at number 4 tells me that we have 13 humans in the room and actually watch the game and pay attention. Because it's clear to me that when Kelly Bryant was hurt that Friday night, and it's no disrespect to all the Syracuse alums we have working here at ESPN, that was a different team they played. Kelly Bryant and Clemson, they weren't the same that night, and the committee is paying attention to that, and they are giving him a little bit of a pass for him being hurt, even though they lost that game. 5 and 6 are intriguing, Greeny, because in sports, here's what we're often taught. The head-to-head matters. If I play you head-to-head and I beat you, that means I'm better. That's what we're taught in sports. Well, the College Football Playoff Committee says, you know what? That's only coming into play if we view the teams as equal. So if head-to-head is going to come into play between Oklahoma and Ohio State, it's because the committee is going to view these two teams as being equal. Right now, they look at it, they have Oklahoma ahead of Ohio State. So that tells me right now they view those two teams very, very similar. So I think they got it right, but it's important to understand, Greeny, in the last 3 college football playoff rankings, this being the 4th year, the teams that were in the initial rankings, I want to say only 3 or 4 of them made the final. Total. So this is going to fluctuate. It's going to change. But to answer your question, the committee is off to a good start.
So there are a couple of things I question. I agree with you. And I agree. I believe Clemson is one of the 4 best teams in the country. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to pick at your argument, it would be that isn't depth part of that test, which is to say, because Trevor was talking yesterday about injuries that teams have suffered, not just Clemson. They had offensive line problems here and all sorts of other injuries. Mm-hmm. Well, isn't that part of being a great team, is being able to overcome injuries? Injuries are a part of football. Every single week, guys are getting hurt in all these games. So the really great teams are able to overcome those. I get it. When it's a quarterback, it's a little different than other things. But isn't that significant?
It is significant, Greeny, but I think the quarterback position changes that dynamic because I think when you have 5 coaches, and I think it's important to remember, yes, you can have depth, but when guys haven't played, it's going to take them a while to get acclimated. And this committee has 5 coaches on the committee out of the 13 members. So I think those coaches weigh a heavy role in this room, understanding and getting everyone else to say, hey, guys, this team is one of the best. Their quarterback was hurt. They lost. Let's give them a little bit of a pass right now.
All right, I'm going to get back to that with you in a minute, but I just got the television rating for last night, and it's very high. It's not nearly as high as last year. So last night's rating for Game 7 on Fox, the number I have here is a 19.0 metered market average. That's very good. But it's nowhere near last year. Now, we had the number that this year, the Game 6 actually outrated last year's Game 6. This year's Game 7 is nowhere near what last year's Game 7 was. Now, remember, last year's Game 7 was almost impossibly dramatic. It featured a blown lead by a closer. It featured a rain delay, and it featured an extra inning win for the Cubs, winning a championship for the first time in over a century. But for what it's worth, that game last year did a 25.7 rating, which is unheard of.
Wow.
I mean, it's unimaginably high. And this game did a 19 rating last night, which I can't speak for anyone. I think that's going to be considered to be very good.
Yes.
I think they're going to be very happy with that. We don't have, obviously, a rating from the year before that to go back to because that series only went 5 games. I'd like to see what it was in relation to the year before. The Royals and the Giants in 2014 played Game 7. I'm sure this rating is much, much higher than that. So we'll look up a couple of those and try and get a sense of it. But I think that they finished with a bang. I think a 19 rating is extremely good, an extremely high number, even if it does not look like it sitting next to what last year's television rating was. Hey, Mike and Mike, if you missed any of our coverage this morning of the World Series, including Cal Ripken in hour number 2, a reminder you can listen to any and all 4 hours of Mike and Mike on demand in the ESPN app. You can also subscribe to the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. That's all available on the Listen tab of the ESPN app. And by the way, tonight, 8 Eastern on ESPN and the ESPN app, we got college football, Navy versus Temple, and guess who will be on the call? Mike Golick, twice. Golick and Golick Jr. on the call tonight, 8 Eastern on ESPN and the ESPN app of Navy versus Temple. All right, we are presented by Progressive Insurance, our guests all morning on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Let me give you some perspective. So the 19.0 rating for the Game 7 last night, if you just put it up against last year when they did over a 25, it's going to look bad. But last year's game was just much, much, much more compelling. Right. Here are some numbers that will make you smile if you're baseball. The last time they had a Game 7 before that was 2014, Royals and Giants, the legendary Madison Bumgarner game, which ended, if memory serves, with the Royals had the tying run on third base. Right? Am I getting that right? Didn't the Royals have the tying run at third base when that ended? So it was a close game. I hope I'm remembering that right. Well, anyway, that game got a 13.7 rating. Last night did a 19. That game got a 13.7. And last night's game ranks as the second highest rated baseball broadcast since the 2002 Game 7 between the Giants and the Angels. So that's 15 years. Last year's Game 7 was the highest rated baseball game in 15 years, and last night was second. So my initial inclination seems to have been right. This was an extremely good rating. They'll be very happy. And you know what? To Rob Manfred and all the gang over there at Major League Baseball, congratulations. Yeah. You deserved it. You've made some good changes to the sport. I think there are some that still need to be made. But this narrative that baseball has ceased to be a national product, that it's become an increasingly regional product, which is in some ways during the regular season is true. And by the way, isn't necessarily such a bad thing. This postseason has shown us that there is still a lot of national attention if you give us good, compelling storylines and teams. It doesn't hurt that we had huge markets in it. So congratulations to the gang over at baseball. It was a very good postseason.
Yeah, and I thought the number was going to be really good also, Greeny, just because although the game may not have had so much drama, I thought the game was good because there's always been this intrigue throughout this World Series that the team that gets up, the team that's behind always finds a way to come back. I mean, when you look at the Dodgers jump out 4-0, the Astros tie 4-4, and I'm talking about Game 5.
Sure.
The Dodgers go 7-4, the Astros come back. So you just felt, and I kept waiting last night for the Dodgers to make a run, start scrapping and clawing, and just kind of manufacture a run, but they just could never get across that hump. And I think that was the intriguing part, to watch that, and then to see what the celebration is like. I'm always fascinated, just because I know how we celebrated championships when the confetti came down. It was raining in Miami that time we won for the Colts, and just how those celebrations go. And so I always watch the celebrations because you always pick up on a little something. And, oh, by the way, last night there was a proposal during the celebration, so it was fascinating.
Yeah, Carlos Correa, congratulations to him and his now fiance. That was a really nice moment. And, again, we were willing to bypass our usual frowning upon of in-stadium proposals.
Yes.
We don't like that here on our show. On Mike and Mike, we've never really cared for it. It just feels like it's been done to death, that Jumbotron proposal. I'm not a fan of it. I also think it puts the proposee in a bit of an uncomfortable position. It's a tough spot to say no.
Do you have to pay for that? Like, let's say, for instance, I want to go to. Obviously I can't do it now. I'm married, but let's say you want to
renew your vows.
Yeah, my wife wouldn't like that though. But do you have, would I have to pay Yankee Stadium to do that? Or?
I don't think so. I think you let them know ahead of time that you want to do it. I honestly don't know the answer to that, but I will say that when my parents were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary,
right.
We took them, my family, we all went to, we had like a celebratory weekend, and we took them to Yankee Stadium. Both my parents are from the Bronx.
Okay.
And so we took them to Yankee Stadium, and I called up someone that I knew, and I had them put up on the it wasn't a picture of them or anything, but they did put up on the Jumbotron, happy 50th anniversary to Harriet and Arnold Greenberg. And I didn't pay for it or anything like that.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's something that normally gets paid for or not. Yeah. Actually, now someone just popped something up in front of me, and it says here that you do.
For $2,500.
How much it costs to pull off a scoreboard proposal? The cheapest option, a proposal at Pittsburgh's PNC Park, will cost you less than $40. At Dodger Stadium, it's $2,500. What, are you kidding? It costs $2,500 to get your stuff to propose on the video board?
No, sir. No.
They're charging for that?
And Greeny, it's like advertising. Nothing is free.
Advertising. What are you advertising? It's a proposal.
If you weren't going to run the proposal, you could put an ad up there. So it's space that needs to be.
Understand that,
yes.
But whatever happened to like a little customer service? Like, yeah, come to the ballpark. You want to get engaged at our ballpark. It's like it's better attention for the team than anything else. What could be a better thing than that highlight on SportsCenter all night long? How much fun is it to come to Kansas City Royals games? People are getting engaged and they're hugging and they're kissing and they're happy and all that kind of stuff. It's a whole celebration.
It doesn't matter because you were against it anyway. So I mean,
well, I don't
why
like
are you
it.
Getting all?
Oh my God! I've got the prices on everything. Put that back up again. The Dodgers is $2,500. The Nationals is $1,500.
Oh, look at the Rays. The Rays are $500 and the A's are $85.
Where are the Rays? Show me that.
The Rays are right there, $500.
Yeah. The Rays. Yeah,
what's going on with the Reds, the Rockies, the Braves, the Pirates? Do they have it right? Just $50?
Yeah, just $50. And some of these teams don't even allow you proposals. I don't have any problem with them not allowing proposals. If you want to say we don't do that, that's fine.
Wow.
Again, maybe different messages are different. I mean, I've seen, like, for example, at Wrigley Field, they put a people's birthday. Harry Carey used to read people's birthdays. I mean, all game, every game.
Right.
No one's. I never assumed anyone was paying for that.
Hey, I'm just telling you.
Everything is about money these days.
Nothing's free. I just imagine walking through the gate and giving the guy that scans your ticket, hey, can you take this to the guy that runs the video board? Tell him to run this in the 7th inning.
Right.
I'm going to need him to run this.
I understand. You can't do that, but come on, a proposal is a big deal. Anyway, congratulations to Carlos and his future bride, and congratulations to the Astros, and congratulations to the great fans of the city of Houston. You've had some championships. We've had a bunch of championships decided in Houston lately.
Yes.
We had the Super Bowl there. We had the Final Four there not long ago. You've got a really good football team with a tremendous young quarterback. Mm-hmm. You've got a basketball team that's a lot of fun to watch, and now you have the World Series champs playing in your town. How about that?
It's unbelievable. Alex Bregman, LSU, shout out, congratulations. McCullers, his sister-in-law is actually from Tampa, so a little connection there. Just congratulations to those guys. It's always special, Greeny, when you get a ring. Always special.
They will have the parade, I'm told, tomorrow in Houston. Meanwhile, Booger will be back with me tomorrow here, and we'll have all the trappings of a full-scale football Friday and hopefully some of the celebrations from Houston as well. So we'll see you then. Thanks for waking up with us right here on Mike and Mike.